But I did a little bit of forecasting actually last night, and it looks like there's some pretty significant stuff headed our way. So you heard it live here first. We have that coronal hole will appear again on April 23rd. May 16th to the 18th looks really significant,
Hmm.
right? Like they're
Yeah.
pointing at my liver and saying, "Oh, that's a big tumor." It's
Yeah.
like, no, it's my liver, bro. Don't take that out. So, it, there needs to be a certain level of like education there, and I mean, yeah, the heart's really interesting. It's just as important as the brain. And I don't want to say if not more so, because then the brain's going
Our
to be.
mission here at the Heart Coherence Collaborative is to get people in touch with the healing power of the heart.
And we really need your help. Right now, only 1% of viewers subscribe. We are aiming to take that number to 6%.
The reason why we want to do that is the more people that subscribe, the more people in the world can learn the magical practice of heart coherence.
So please help us out. If you've ever listened, if you love this message, please just take a moment to subscribe.
Thank you so much. We love you.
We love you.
Welcome, everybody, to the Heart Coherence Collaborative. I'm so excited. I got our new friend, Stefan Burns, today joining us. And the reason this is super special is because over the last few weeks, I've had a lot of friends reach out to me like, oh, you got to look into this guy. He's talking about all this amazing stuff that's going on with the sun, the earth, plate tectonics, everything you could possibly imagine, geophysics related. And I'm stoked to have you here, man. If we could just start out, what the heck is going on with the sun right now and the earth? It seems pretty crazy.
Well, thanks for having me on the channel. And I'm always surprised when I hear other people saying that I'm being talked about in like some web or something. You go to the crystal shop, they're like, hey, I watch your videos. You're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Um, but it's interesting right now. The sun it's doing, you could say, exceptional things, but it's also not doing anything exceptional.
Okay.
It's more like the timing and the sequence of it that's kind of special. But at the end of the day, also, I think that this type of stuff has happened for a long time, but it's also just been outside of our normal consciousness.
Right.
So with my channel, I'm not necessarily trying to hype up any specific event to be more than it is in regards to like, okay, here we have a solar flare and a coronal mass ejection, and now this is going to reset the Earth. Like, if we get that sort of super flare, I will let people know, but I'm not going to hype up something that's not that to that.
Right.
But I am cognizant to some degree, right? I think we're all learning this right now and coming to this awareness that these things do affect us. And that's where, not hype, but that's where some of the awareness comes. It's like, okay, if we do have a S2 proton radiation storm, which is pretty powerful,
Yeah.
that does affect us. And we shouldn't just be like, oh, it does nothing. Like, we should talk about that and how it affects us and how it affects the Earth. And then, as you know, but for anyone watching, we just had a very large coronal hole on the sun, which is just an interesting magnetic field dynamic. And it was really large, like one of the largest that we've seen in a long time. And immediately after the solar wind that flows out of that hit us, we started getting a whole bunch of high magnitude earthquakes. So it's not like we've never had this before, but if we bring this into consciousness, and especially if we understand this through the spiritual lens, then we can start to understand the real significance of these sort of events. And that doesn't take away from what's happened in the past, and it also won't take away from notable events like this all happen in the future. But it is special and it's worth talking about. It's not worth, it's like we shouldn't just ignore it or gaslight ourselves into believing it's nothing. Like, it's a real thing that affects a lot of people across physical, mental, emotional, and also the spiritual domain. So yeah, there's a lot happening right now.
Yeah. So could you talk a little bit about the specific earthquakes and why those are happening?
So we're just having a lot of high magnitude earthquakes. The past few years have actually been a little odd in the fact that we haven't had the higher magnitude earthquakes at the regular frequency that we typically see. So for example, we haven't had like a magnitude 8+ earthquake, I think it's like 4 years now, something like that, if not more. Meanwhile, we typically get one of those every single year.
Yeah.
Usually once a year. It's like a 13-month recurrence interval, something like that on average. So of course there's these changes, but that's about the normal frequency of that. But if we go back to like 50 years, we saw this decreasing amount of solar energy coming in because each solar cycle since number 19 has gotten weaker. We're in solar cycle 25 now. 24 was the weakest by far. And we saw this increase in earthquakes leading up to that. And this goes back to even beyond that to the solar grand maximum that we're in, which is what started after the Maunder minimum. So this goes back like 300 plus years where we've had increasing light energy from the sun, and that loads the earth. And it seems that on all the different time scales, whether it's like a weekly or like a yearly or even a like solar cycle 12 year or this maximum period of 300 years, it seems that the earth absorbs the energy from the sun until it lets off the gas, and then it releases this energy. So if you have 300 years of increasing energy coming in, then you're going to have a lot of earthquakes that will start to pop off once that pulls back. It says solar cycle 24, the last one, and the peak of that was 2012 to 2014 or so, and then the minimum period that followed. It's during those minimum periods that you get this sort of earthquake activity. And 24 was so weak that it also just in general had a lot of earthquakes even during the maximum period because again it was anomalously weak. But if you take that in consideration, we had a lot of earthquakes actually in the 2010s. In the first, from the early 2000s to about 2020, we had a lot of earthquakes. Now we've kind of gone quiet because we released so much energy during that time period, and now things do seem to be ramping back up again because we've had some solar loading once more, and now the earthquakes are coming. But we are still, you could say, overdue for some of these like magnitude 8 earthquakes. In terms of where they're popping off, there seems to be a little bit of a higher concentration just for the past 2 weeks along these oceanic ridges where the plates are spreading, which is interesting. I'm not sure if that's related to like, you know, oceanic ridges are where the mantle is convecting and you have this active flow of energy. So it does seem to be related to this. But it's not like every single earthquake we've had has been on the ridges. So it could just be a slight bump in that, which makes it a little interesting, but nothing crazy anomalous. But in general, just seeing this seismic burst that's been unfolding for 2 weeks now, you know, really nicely demonstrates the connection between solar activity and earthquakes, and we feel both of those biophysically. So that's the thing that I like to educate on the channel about as well. It's like, you know, we're having this. You may not have like felt the earthquake and had your house rumble or shake, but you know, there's energetic connections that we have to this. That's why it's important for everyone to have at least a little bit of understanding of that globally, so we can understand how these energy flows are affecting all of us and together. And yeah.
So basically what I'm hearing you say is that the earth is kind of just like cooling off some of this and shaking off some of this energy that it's been receiving. Now what are we done with it? What are you projecting moving forward based off of what you're seeing?
That's a good question. I mean, I thought we were kind of wrapping up with the earthquake burst a couple days ago. And then we had the magnitude 6.9 that just occurred yesterday. Today's the 4th of April. And actually today we have some really significant planetary aspects. So we're talking on a pretty significant day astrologically. But I mean, the effects of that coronal hole and the high-speed stream should be coming to a close. But I did a little bit of forecasting actually last night. And it looks like there's some pretty significant stuff headed our way. So you heard it live here first. We have that coronal hole will appear again on April 23rd. And I don't think it's going to completely just disappear in one solar rotation, because that was the 7th appearance that it had. So it survived 7 times now.
Wow.
Eventually, of course, it's going to go away. But it was so large for it to go from its largest to completely gone in 28 days. I don't think it's going to be the case. So we have that appearing again on the 23rd, almost certainly. And so that's going to give us another one of these high-speed stream hits. It could get bigger. It could be even larger next time. Like we could see some real some real stuff happening the later half of April. And then I fast forwarded a little bit and I was looking at the planetary geometry, which helped me be pretty accurate with my forecasting for March. And so this is a method I'm still like working with and seeing if it's really, really good. And May 16th to the 18th looks really significant from multiple perspectives. That's when we have Uranus Cazimi. And so Uranus and the sun will be aligned in the sky, and we see notable things happen around Cazimis, and also with Uranus Cazimi in particular. But then the heliocentric chart and the angles that the planet makes. So the angles that the planets make while the sun's in the center, right? Looking from that heliocentric perspective, that's also pretty intense. So I'm looking at May 16th to the 18th. I'm like, something looks like it's going to happen then. So I don't know where or when. I have to do more analysis to see maybe where something's going to occur, but those are the dates I have.
So I would love to hear how is this like interrelating with, how can people who are in the spiritual world use this information, this great information that you're providing to their benefit?
Well, the foundation kind of for my belief on that is just that learning more about the earth and learning more about the sun inherently just helps us to connect and understand these things and make us realize how we're a part of it all.
Yeah.
So there doesn't even need to be a takeaway. Like just the inherent knowledge of some of this stuff will kindle that connection, right? And to start to feed that flame, which naturally exists inside all of us. And that's why so many people that get into these fields end up kind of branching off into spiritual realms. That's what I see, at least. So I don't think it even needs to go beyond that. It doesn't need to be like this high magnitude earthquake occurred, so now let us all like do a 10,000 person live stream for peace or something. Like that sounds great, but it doesn't need to be that. Like these things just happen. Let's just let, Earth can just do her thing, right? We're the little creatures that exist on her, and she's going to do whatever she wants regardless. These things aren't necessarily bad. They just are what they are. But I do think you can start to work with them. Once you have an awareness understanding, you can start with like the health and wellness first. Like if you, very simple thing. We see a solar flare pop off. We have a transit time of like 3 days. We know it's going to hit us, right? It's like a surefire thing. Just based on the data. I'm not going to drink coffee that day. Like I'm not going to slam back a double shot latte or something on the day that a solar storm is going to hit us. Like you're already going to get a big cortisol spike from that and other things. So there's like simple things like that. Then you can go into the more spiritual aspects. Like, okay, we do have increased geomagnetic volatility coming our way. That seems to have a connection to our ability to dream in these lower frequency brainwaves, like theta waves, delta waves. Because geomagnetic pulsations overlap with delta waves. And they can even go up into that low theta range, which is like 5 hertz. And then Schumann resonances are also strengthened. They overlap with the high theta band at 7.8 hertz. So it's like, okay, well, on the night of that storm, maybe I'll drink some spirituality and have hopefully a chance of having like a precognition dream or a lucid dream. And you can think about like plasma, for example. Plasma, in my belief, it's completely conscious. Like everything has consciousness. Even just a pebble has consciousness. It's just what degree of consciousness. And so plasma being exceptionally vibrational and having order and coherence and all these other dynamics that we consider akin to life. The sun is literally sending a packet of solar consciousness that the earth, which is also conscious, works with and then gives to us. So you can start to work with it from that perspective, and that's what I do as well. But you can go just all the way from the foundation. If this stuff is cool and I feel a greater connection with just kind of everything, to, okay, I'm not going to drink my coffee when the solar storm hits because my cortisol is going to get spiked anyway, so I don't need it.
Yeah.
Unless you're a real cortisol freak, right?
Yeah.
Then going to, okay, maybe I can start to work with this and meditate during these things or try to cultivate certain experiences. If you're really bold, you can work with psychedelics under the influence of like a solar storm, right? So there's a whole bunch of range to this.
Yeah. So I just want to break that down a little bit and make it super basic for people. But basically, because there's a lot of energy coming from the sun, you're going to be receiving that increased energy. It's going to create additional cortisol. And as a result, coffee might send you into a tailspin.
Yeah, yeah, it's just better not to like crank that lever, in my opinion.
Yeah, but this is so important for people, because not really that many people know about this. And they might be, having a little extra coffee that day, and then they're spiraling out at home and they don't know why, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I definitely, now that I've cut back my coffee a lot, I notice how it's affecting my energy more consciously.
Yeah.
Because I had 2 espressos yesterday, but I hadn't had anything for like a week before that. But it just felt like a great day to do. I'm actually glad I did. It was perfect. But I noticed myself eating my lunch a lot faster. Everything just felt a little rushed.
Yeah.
And that's even with me like taking L-theanine. So
Right.
I took the same amount of L-theanine. Actually, it's about 400 milligrams of L-theanine, probably about 200 milligrams of caffeine all together, which is a good ratio. And still, I noticed I was just a little faster with everything. Not in a bad way, just, I ate my lunch really quick, and it could have been a little slower. And so the point is, like, there's 9 times out of 10, the solar storm will hit, you'll have your coffee and you'll be fine. But it's when you're at that critical threshold yourself, you're about to have an earthquake and something's going to happen with your health, whatever that is.
Yeah.
If you can avoid that by laying off the thing that's going to bump you up when there's already a big wave coming in, then that can be useful. I guess it's just building better awareness of your health and wellness at any point in time, and how things affect you, both in terms of the decisions you make and then also external factors. And it is a lot to kind of keep your mind on, but the only way for that to get easier and easier and actually become subconscious eventually is to do that. So that's the wellness practice.
Yeah, that's great. That's really useful information. So I appreciate that. And the next thing you said was that you work on kind of receiving this information. Is it through the sleep that you primarily do that, or are there other ways that you go about that?
Well, I think it's always coming in. And so it's just good to be mindful. If you have like a thought or idea pop into your head, then to jot that down when you get it.
Yeah.
Learning to distinguish between you as a receiver picking up on thoughts, right? But they're not necessarily yours, right? You're just like literally receiving noise and chatter. I mean, I had like what you could call a psychic attack once, where I was just like laying down, or I wasn't sleeping, but I was getting ready to take a nap or something like that. But all of a sudden, this like hive of just like tons of voices and chatter and noise like hit my head.
Yeah.
And it was like 1,000 people all of a sudden just like talking into your ear at once. They're not screaming, they're not whispering, but just like this complete chaos. And I was like, what the heck is this? And I'm pretty sure I called upon St. Michael. I think something like that happens. I'm like, boom, Archangel St. Michael, like, bro, you got me. And, I was able to get that thing to just like fly away somewhere else. But it was some sort of energy form that was just like this chaos thought energy. It's like a knot almost, right? And it just was in my area and went to me. And for a lot of people, they might then all of a sudden start to think that's them. But I was like pretty calm, cool, and collected before that. Then all of a sudden that happened. I'm like, bro, I know that's not me. Like, I was like about to fall asleep. Like, what is this? So I was able to dispel it and just like shoot it off and, hopefully diminish it. But regardless, like, we are receivers as well as transmitters. So if you make sure your receiving function is on and you're actively listening, you don't have to be sitting in meditation for 12 hours. At least I don't believe that. You can be doing stuff. I mean, I should meditate more, to make that clear. But also there is this idea of just being a little bit more meditative throughout the day, because, there's things to be done. So
Yeah.
I think that's an important thing. And then, you can hopefully increase your chances of connecting to these energies and receiving these downloads during sleep by taking, let's say, like I have a tea blend I sell for sleep called
Nice.
Spirituality, but even just
Cool.
something like
I was going to
chamomile.
ask you about that. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, even just chamomile would help. But there's various herbs which potentiate dreams and stuff.
Yeah.
And you can also now, with more energy there, you can start to work with any like past trauma or things of this nature, because that's all stored in the subconscious
Yeah.
and the unconscious mind. And so that, things bubble up from the unconscious mind during these sort of events, like a solar storm impact and a strong
Oh, wow.
geomagnetic storm.
That's a fascinating point that I want to hone in on. So you're saying during these storms, things can bubble up from the subconscious. So that rattling your system. And do you believe that that's this chatter you were hearing that came up for you during these storms, or was that some other sort of uh, consciousness?
That was a one-time thing. And I really think I really don't feel like that was me at all. I think it literally like flew in and just
Yeah.
attached to me, and then when it didn't find an easy person, it just flew off, right?
Wow.
But okay, so I'm in San Diego. I'm in Pacific Beach, and I mean most cities have homeless people now, but we have a little bit more here. Um, if you're homeless, and let's say you're like drunk all the time,
Yeah.
right? Like if it hits that one of those people, it's going to stay there for a while, because that person all of a sudden is not going to know how to shake that off. And you
Yeah.
see you see sometimes people with these sort of mental problems that are going around, they're just talking
Mm.
nonstop or yelling, whatever, right? Not every homeless person is like that, but you see that more in that community. So very well could have flown off of some homeless person, perhaps, or some other person who just took some time for it to discharge, and I think it is was flying through, and it's like, let me try this dude out. It's like, oh, bro, he called out Archangel St. Michael, like I'm out, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it can bring up things from the subconscious just because it's increasing the overall energy of the field.
Hmm.
And so when you have just more energy coursing through your biofield, your brain, I think it helps to open up certain doors
Yeah.
and create connections between them, whereas before there was more resistivity. And so that's an opportunity then to do a little bit of reprogramming of your default mode network and your whatever programming you may have to release that and install your own operating system. And yeah, I think these are all opportunities for that.
Yeah. Wow. There's so much. There's so much there. Um, so I would love to hear more about our interaction with the Earth. Maybe you could start off by giving a basic explanation of Schumann's resonance to people.
hmm Yeah, we have this thing on Earth called the Schumann resonance, and I guess it should really just be called like Earth resonances. But we call them the Schumann resonance because it was discovered, first observed, first theorized, and then observed by this German scientist with the last name of Schumann. So they're called Schumann resonances in honor of him. But effectively, he was a like an ionosphere geophysicist, you could say. There's a specific term for it, but I can't recall it right now. Either way, he did a lot of electrical engineering and physics and things of this nature, and he theorized like, okay, if we have this ionosphere, this little part of the upper atmosphere that has plasma to it, it's going to form like this reflective layer. And it should act as a waveguide and trap any of these electromagnetic waves that happen to exist on Earth. And so he came up with the idea and he calculated what the resonant frequency of that cavity is. Because every cavity will have a frequency to it. If you have a sphere this large, it'll be a higher frequency, and the bigger the sphere gets, the lower the frequency, the natural resonant frequency is. So he calculated that out. Then we observed them. They're slightly different than he observed. But effectively, we have this layer of plasma at the upper part of our atmosphere that has all these electromagnetic properties to it. And then we have all these things that happen closer to Earth, like lightning strikes, and they release a bunch of light energy. I mean, you see a lightning flash. That's actual light photons, right? You're seeing it. But you're not just seeing visible light photons. You're also being hit at that time. If you can see a lightning bolt, you're also being hit with light photons going up into X-rays,
Mm.
though not that much, but still it's going from visible light to ultraviolet to extreme ultraviolet to X-ray, even gamma rays, with like the strongest ones. And then you're also getting hit with thermal radiation, microwaves, very low frequency radio waves, and extremely low frequency radio waves. So you're going all the way from 0 to nearly infinity. You're getting hit with all that from a lightning strike. And only the lowest frequencies end up propagating around the world globally. The other ones will attenuate out. The X-rays will get absorbed really quick into the atmosphere. They actually may not even reach you in any significant quantity. The visible light, of course, will hit you. The microwaves go out pretty far, and that's why certain lightning flash detectors, they can pick up a lightning strike like 400 miles away or something like that, because they're probably listening to that VLF band instead of just like actually looking for a visible flash. You're not going to see that. But the VLF, burst all of a sudden will hit the sensor and say, hey, lightning strike. And then the extremely low frequency waves that are pulsing at 10 hertz and 20 hertz and 30 hertz, those are the ones that they're just so slow and their wavelength is so long that they propagate globally. But there's certain ones that form these standing waves because the Earth has its circumference in physical dimensions. And so you can calculate that circumference. It's 40,000 kilometers. If you take a wavelength of light that's 40,000 kilometers, now it's in resonance with the Earth itself because they have the same dimensions. Earth circumference 40,000, this wavelength of light 40,000, that calculates out to 7.5 hertz. If you take the speed of light at 300,000 kilometers per second. And lo and behold, that's the foundational mode that Winifred Otto Schumann, theorized. It's 7.8 hertz, but in reality, it has a bit of a band. So 7.2 to about 8.5 or so. And it likes to hover around 7.8 to 8 hertz. That's its primary frequency band. But they just form these natural standing waves are just always pulsing in the background at these frequencies. And so 7.8 hertz is the foundational mode. It's like the bottom of the pyramid. It's the strongest, has the most power to it. But then you go a step up, you have 14 hertz, and you go another step up, you have 20. Another one up is like 26 hertz. One more, 33. Those are the first 5 modes. Then you have mode 6 at 39, mode 7 at 45, and they get progressively weaker, and eventually they fade off. You won't really observe Schumann resonances above 100 hertz. I mean, seeing anything beyond mode 7 is pretty rare, but sometimes. But those are always just pulsing in the background, and they connect to our heart rhythms, they connect to our brain waves. They have the same frequency and strength as our brain waves. Which is very interesting. So we evolved in these things because they're a natural geophysical process for millions of years, and our biology tuned itself to those natural frequencies because there's always energy there. It's not much, but because they're constantly being fed energy by lightning and all this other stuff, which fundamentally is all energy from the sun, the Earth is piggyback on the energy from the sun, and then us humans are piggyback on the energy of the Earth, right? It's like, well, might as well run our brainwave architecture at Schumann frequencies because, if someone drops unconscious, at least there'll always be a little bit of a pulse beat there. Yeah. And you go beyond that, and it's a way for us to actually connect to each other, kind of like psychically, you could say. You can make that argument, If these things have our brainwave, if they have the same brainwave architecture as we do, and we have our own thoughts and memories and ideas, then who's to say that those aren't also floating around in the Schumann resonances? And it's a larger collective consciousness. So there's a lot of very interesting things about it.
Could you talk a little bit more about that, how it has the same brainwaves as we do?
Yeah, we see the strongest Schumann frequencies in the brain in the regions further back. And so the frontal lobe is really, it's like top of mind cognition, and we're problem solving things of this nature. And in some aspects, it's the furthest abstracted away from some of our base processes. So this is like, you could say, our transmitter. Right. This is our transmitter popping off right here. But our receiver is in the back, and that's the part of the brain that really overlaps with Schumann frequencies, especially the temporal lobes, which if you want to have a receiver, you want kind of like two sides of the antenna wire, right? For sure. TV antenna has two of them, typically. I mean, there's other ways to have that set up, but regardless, our temporal lobes will pulse at 8 hertz. And the temporal lobes govern our our spatial awareness, and temporal stands for time, so also our sense of time, and then also language. So that's basically everything you need to create some sort of virtual reality effectively, right?
Okay.
You need awareness of time, awareness of space, and communication and language. They do other things too, but that's very much like when you have a dream, right? Your sense of time is not perfect, but there is like a flow of time there.
Yeah.
And you have like, a setting and an awareness and an environment, and then also you can communicate and all this stuff. So they pulse at that foundational mode, and then further back, and this is like the caudal regions. They also overlap with Schumann frequencies. There's variability among people. Some people don't show that super clear Schumann brainwave structure. Other people show a higher affinity for it.
Wow.
And so that could explain why some people, they kind of pick up things intuitively from the field, or they have more significant dreams, and other people don't.
How would
But
you
I
get
think it
that
can be
tested?
trained.
Can you get that tested?
Um, I guess technically, but not really. There's not like a company you can go to that'll test you. But I mean, we have all the technology, just no
Yeah,
one's
yeah.
like set it up yet. That'd
Yeah.
be cool, eventually. I mean, maybe eventually I'll have that set up, but no, it's not easy to do at this moment in time.
So cool, man. I would love to hear just if you could give people a basic rundown. What does it mean when we're seeing different readings in the Schumann's resonance? Because we hear all the time, oh, the Schumann's resonance going crazy. What's happening? How can we use that information?
Yeah, well, there's a bit of a problem. I think every industry has a problem, right? Every field, whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
One of the problems with the Schumann resonance one is that the people who understand the Schumann resonances in general, they're not at all really in the spiritual community or interested in any of the New Age stuff. And if I'm being clear, just and to kind of be brutally honest, I think there's a lot of garbage in the New Age community.
Dude, let's clean it up, man. Let's clean it up.
But I love it though. I think there's so much there, and it's just like it's like going to a beach in Bali. Like the beach is wonderful, but there's just like a lot of stuff, and it's like, yeah, we should pick up our litter and our trash, and like we should get this cleaned up. And the reason why there's a lot of that, and this is just again my belief and opinion, but the reason why there is a lot of that is because the New Age community is accepting of everyone. So we are taking on all that collective baggage, and so that is our process and responsibility to work through and process. So why did I say that? Well, you have a lot of people talking about the Schumann resonances that, like, for whatever reason, they haven't taken upon themselves the responsibility of actually learning what they're talking about. Like,
Right.
they're talking about from an intuitive perspective, and I'm not going to say there's no value to that, because there's a lot of ways to know something. But if you're going to be pointing at a technical chart, you should probably learn what the technical chart is about, right? I don't want someone looking at my MRI that is like didn't go and doesn't even know what they're looking at, right? Like they're pointing at my liver and saying, "Oh, that's a big tumor." It's like, no, it's my liver, bro. Don't take that out. There needs to be a certain level of like education there. And I mean, I don't know. I'm my own person, but like,
I think you're that guy though. I really do. And that's why so many people are gravitating towards you right now, is because you can actually be that guy that makes it easy for people to understand these things. And not every time there's a mass ejection from the sun, everybody's like, oh my God, I gotta, go call my therapist or something, like,
well, you are right. I mean, thankfully, when I do make a video on the Schumann resonances, and I used to make them more often, but when I do make one, it's by far the most popular video on them.
oh, really?
I mean, I haven't found another channel that makes like my last video on the Schumann resonances is like 300 something thousand views.
Wow.
But I'm not releasing a video on them daily, so I just wish these channels that did it daily.
Yeah.
I just wish they had a better connection, because people they form these emotional connections with people, especially the videos that they're watching daily or the blog that they're reading daily, whatever. And so they start to really connect and trust to this individual. And if that person, it's about personal responsibility. Like personally, like if I was doing that daily, and I did that for a while, right? I would like really want to understand. My natural curiosity would lead me to the research papers to read them, but
For sure.
people, not everyone works the same. So you get some nonsense, in my opinion, because we see the Schumann resonance, and it has effects locally and globally, wherever you're measuring it. Because again, I talked about the lightning strike. Well, if you have a lightning strike 10 miles away from you and it's pumping out all these waves, they're going to be higher power. But if someone's 1,000 waves from a lightning strike, it's going to be a totally different background electromagnetic spectrum.
Yeah.
Like the power ratios and everything are going to be different. But because these Schumann waves are propagating out globally, you can measure them anywhere globally. And then you have to think about how the local atmospheric activity is modifying that. So if you're, let's say, on Easter Island and it's completely fair weather conditions, not a cloud in the sky, you're measuring the Schumann resonances globally, and there's only going to be minor differences for them because you're in the southern hemisphere versus the northern hemisphere, whatever. I mean, they go up in power. Here's another thing, like they go up in power when the sun passes overhead, and then they decrease in power when the sun goes down. So if you're in North America, and you're looking at a printout from Russia, which is what most people do, which is nearly opposite us, exactly, right, on the other side of the globe, you're seeing the Schumann resonances go up in power because of daylight every day. This is a diurnal effect that occurs every day. You'll see them go up in power when it's daylight for them. Meanwhile, you're looking at it and it's 10 p.m. for you, right? It's not. That's not what it is for you. The Schumann resonances locally for you will be at a decreased power for the diurnal effect. But then also maybe you have a thunderstorm boiling overhead. And if that's the case, then yeah, you're going to be blasted with Schumann resonances. But if you're in Detroit and then someone else is in Tijuana, they're not going to have that because they don't have the thunderstorm. So it's really important to learn some of those basics. And I do educate on that a lot. And I know a lot of people do take that to heart, but it seems that it just goes like this over some people's heads, unfortunately. So I don't know.
That's great information. Is there times when we should be concerned with the readings of the Schumann's resonance, or do you think for the most part it's all just based off of normal things that are happening and we shouldn't give it too much concern?
99% of the time, it's that. It's like, I think doesn't mean it's not fascinating.
It is fascinating.
And you should definitely watch it because, I mean, we've seen pre-earthquake signals in them before. They show up there, and that's been used. I've done that multiple times on the channel where I noticed unusual signals that I could tell were not related to atmospheric activity because I've done a lot of research on this, and you can start to learn these things. And then it's like, okay, like something weird is happening, folks. And then something weird happened, like a big earthquake. Multiple examples of that on my channel recently and also going like a couple years back. But 99% of the time, things are just chugging away like normal. With our current, there's not that many data feeds for this that are public. One of my goals is to have a whole bunch of stations across the United States so we can actually create like a not 3D, but a more comprehensive reading in terms of like the power levels and averages across time, right? Because it is affected by local activity. But if you start to have a reading for, let's say, the entire United States, and let's say there has been a ton of atmospheric electricity because of storms rolling through whatever, and you can look at, let's say, the weekly chart and say, hey, our power has gone up 15% compared to last week, and this is for the average of all the United States readings, then you can start to think about how that's affecting us consciously, individually, but then also collectively. It's like, okay, there's been a 15% increase in brainwave power, you could say, for North America this week versus last overall because of these storms that have been rolling through. So then it becomes useful, more useful. But if you're just looking at a single chart for a place that's not even your location and you see a spike in the data because there was some thunderstorm activity there, but you point at it and say that this was the second coming of Christ, then I think you're deluding everyone. And that's the whole point of the New Age I mean, the whole point of spirituality is not be diluted anymore,
Yeah.
right? It's to awaken in consciousness and be free of delusions and illusions and all this stuff. So, the thing is, you're going to have those forces working within the community of light workers, and you have to be mindful of that. And a lot of people aren't.
Dude,
Um,
this is such an important conversation because what I'm actually having deep revelations as you're speaking that I probably like 4 or 5 years ago just started blocking people out who were talking about this stuff because so much of it felt airy fairy. Like I have 3 houses in Pluto this month or whatever it is, and as a result of that, I need to be grounding today and like all this crazy stuff and it never really felt grounded in anything scientific. And so it just turned me off, and there was so much of it that I kind of just started blocking it all out.
yeah, I mean, there's thankfully we leave room open for everybody, but I am, judgment isn't the best frequency you could say, right?
Right, right, right.
There's better frequencies, but I think responsibility is a great frequency, and
Absolutely.
that means taking on your own responsibility, and
Absolutely.
that could mean a whole bunch of different things. If you have kids and you're not treating them well, or you're not really doing the best as a parent, like take that responsibility up. It could also be responsibility of taking up your your true soul purpose life mission. Like, what is it that you actually came here to do? You know it's going to be a hard path to walk, but you got to do it.
Yeah,
Take up that responsibility. It's also holding others responsible too,
yeah.
like, and it for their best interest and for
Mhm.
the community's like interest. Like, you're not gonna, if you have some wacko running around the community causing problems, and they're spray painting the playground, and they're making the kids feel weird, and they're just drinking all the time at the liquor store or something, like,
Yeah,
ideally as a
yeah,
community you're like, yo, dude, like, we got to figure this out or else you got to go, right?
yeah,
And if people are just going to ignore that, then they're absolving themselves of that responsibility. And in the long run, maybe someone eventually gets hurt, right? Like, we
yeah,
don't want that. And so what you see with some of these groups, whether it's Schumann people or whether it's people reading tarot cards, which I think there's a lot of benefit to divination, but a lot of people will take what they hear from a tarot reading that someone else did, right? Just
yeah,
for
yeah,
10,000 people on YouTube, not even like one that they did directed for them,
yeah,
right? Just a general reading that came out with like the Tower card and the Devil card. And now they think that the next 2 weeks for them is going to be like terrible, or that they're going to have some like ill fate befall them. That I don't think is really helping anybody.
yeah,
And it's a level of consciousness. Like you said, you were able to put up the blinders, right? But
yeah,
not everyone is at that stage yet. And some people are still just so open, receptive, like babies, right? Babies just take everything in. Kids just take
yeah,
everything in. You could say something to a kid that's just a joke. Like, anyone else would know it's a joke, but they will take it 100% as a truth of reality and carry that forward until something else causes that to, be encountered. Um, and so that's the thing. You wouldn't even know as an adult. It's not even a conscious thought that what you said is going to be taken by the kid and carried for 10 years and now create some sort of childhood thing, right? Trauma, whatever. Um, but they work differently. And I feel like with the spiritual community, basically we're all babies. And so we're
yeah,
taking in all this stuff. And the few adults out there, if you're someone that's out there making a lot of content, then you need to hold yourself responsible like an adult.
yeah,
That's what I believe.
yeah,
And so, I'm getting better and better at that myself. But I will make, when there's like something happening with the Schumann resonances, and I know there's a lot of people going to talk about it or whatever,
mm,
I often will try to front run that and make a video on it. And then, as you know, I'll talk a lot about just what they are, how to actually read the graph, so we can make a proper assessment. I am open-minded, so it's like, hey, I don't know the exact answer, so we're going to go through all the possibilities, but here's what I think is most likely. You can make up your own mind. But I do that, and I think that has made an effect over time. But I still see other people, which, again, they don't have any technical understanding of this stuff.
yeah,
Um, you know, reaching a lot of people, and these people are like, I haven't been able to get out of bed for 5 days or something like that. I'm like, oh my God, like they're
Yeah.
creating their own health problems, right?
Yeah,
I think
man.
health is really foundational to spirituality.
Yeah. Well, I just can't say enough how much I appreciate this conversation. I know we're ending here, but I could talk to you forever. I would love to just hear you talk about the importance of the heart, the electromagnetic center that we have in all of this.
Yeah, the heart's really interesting. It's just as important as the brain. And I don't want to say if not more so, because then the brain's going to get upset. So, they're all very important. But the heart has its own neural network like the brain does. And I think it's really important to like talk to your heart every now and then and say thank you
Yeah.
for its work. Because I view the heart almost as like an independent entity to some degree.
Mm.
And it will give you signals at times for me, and everyone has this, like the heart will clearly give me like a signal through its heartbeat or something like that, and I'll just know, and that's important. But the heart is interesting because it's the master rhythm and a biofield generator of the body. And our magnetic field that the heart generates extends outwards. It becomes our biofield, our aura. But magnetic fields guide the flow of charge carriers like ions. So if you have like a sodium ion or a calcium ion or a potassium ion or something like this, or even more so an electron, because an electron has way less mass.
Yeah.
So it's able to flow along these fields better. That magnetic field guides the flow of all of those. You also have Earth's magnetic field guiding the flow of them. You have your own local environmental magnetic field influences that influence this. So it's all very important. But the heart is one that you have more conscious control of based on your emotional state. So if you're in a happy, blissful state, then the emotional field is different. The frequency pattern of the heart is different. Versus if you're like angry or frustrated, then it'll change that pattern. So like, I could get frustrated by some of these other people that I think maybe are not helping others fundamentally in the New Age community, but I can be thankful that they're also just exposing people to more spiritual ideas. So it's important to see that other side. So your heart frequency is serving you, right? Because you have to serve yourself first. At the end of the day, you have to make sure you're healthy before you can help others. That's what I believe. And we see these frequencies also undergo these shifts when you have like a solar storm impact. When there's a geomagnetic storm, you have these very low frequency geomagnetic pulsations that are created, sub 5 hertz. And those overlap with our lowest frequency heart rate variability rhythms, which go from about 0.5 hertz. Like the fundamental frequency of the heart is 1 hertz, 60 beats per minute, 1 hertz. But then you start to have these heart rate variability rhythms starting at about 0.4 hertz, and then going down to 0.15 hertz, and even down to 0.003 hertz. Like these are extreme, like very low power and very low frequency heart rhythms that are internested as a result of when the heartbeat is occurring. One's 1 second, one's 1.1 second, one's 0.9 seconds, and that creates this frequency pattern. Those change with geomagnetic storms. So the heart is connecting to all these things. And therefore, the fact that we have a little bit of conscious ability with it is important. So when there is something like a solar storm impact, like feeling into what your heart is telling you as it's receiving this energy, and just being mindful that can be good. So it doesn't express itself perhaps negatively, like you lashing out at someone or something, or yourself, right?
Yeah.
And then also, because your heart is always pumping out this energy, bring through consciousness and the power of the mind, cultivating internal state of coherence and love and bliss will then radiate out good vibes with the heart. And I would like to think that also works out this direction as well. So, I mean, that's just a very quick like snapshot on that, but all these things are very important.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. This has been such a mind-blowing, incredible conversation. I'm going to share your work with everybody. Last question, how can we support you? Anybody listening? I'm going to link your tea below for anybody listening that wants some of that. I'll probably grab some myself.
I'll send you one.
All right, awesome. Is there
Yeah.
anything else that you got going on that our people could connect with you on?
Just you could go to my channel on YouTube, which is just Stefan Burns, StefanBurns. I also have a website, Wild Free Organic, which sells a whole bunch of holistic wellness products. I have earthing shoes and boots, which I've worked to design, and they're the best out there. And then also a variety of all herbal tea blends that I make and mix myself. I formulated them myself. It's really just an extension of my own spiritual journey and that process, because I was looking for these things and I couldn't find them to the level of quality that I want. And so I was like, I guess I just got to make them. And so I decided to make them, and I knew that a lot of people resonate with that, and a lot of people ask me for it. So I just developed that as the YouTube channel kept growing. So at this moment in time, just I would say if you found this interesting, then subscribing to my channel where I release videos almost daily, just staying in that resonance. And then I have a lot of things that are building and growing, like this North America Schumann network. I would really like to get that up and running. It's going to take some time, but with I'm a young chap, so with time, I really think that there's going to be some awesome stuff that results of my efforts and my interaction with the community and help from others. So I'm really excited for all that. I mean, the future is so bright right now. It's really exciting.
Awesome, man. Well, keep up the great work. It was a pleasure to have you. And bye, everybody. We love you all.
Thanks so much.